Let's say our La'asok B'divrei Torah blessing together. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Ish B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. So our topic this evening is Birkot HaShachar, sometimes called Nisim B'chol Yom. So either morning blessings or the daily miracles. And it's about having an attitude of gratitude for the things that are easy to take for granted. Originally, these would be blessings that would be said when doing actions as you got up in the morning, and we'll see these one by one. And then eventually it was realized that not everybody knew the blessings, and so it was better to move them into the morning service, where they could be said either communally, as Ashkenazi Jews tend to do today, or individually, but in the service, as Sephardi Jews tend to do. There are three blessings at the beginning, blessings 2, 3, and 4 in the Ashkenazi tradition, that have been changed over time. They were originally thanking God that a man is a Jew, that he is not a woman, that he's not an ignoramus, which pretty quickly got changed to not being a slave. And then 400 years later, they got around to making a blessing for women to say that God made them according to God's will. There were versions of these blessings found in the Cairo Geniza, which was a repository of sacred texts and some not so sacred texts in Cairo, dating back to the 500s. And so one of these ancient scraps showed that in the land of Israel, they did these blessings in the positive form, which was how the blessing for being a Jew was originally worded in the Talmud. And so the conservative movement and the reform movement later changed them to being, thank you, God, for making me a Jew, for making me free, and for making me in the divine image. And this continues to be an issue today in the Orthodox movement, at least the blessing about not making me a woman, how this is considered to be insulting. And there continue to be answers called responsa written about this into the 21st century. All right. Well, let's stop there. Questions about all of this before we go any further with the new material? Okay. Seeing none, we will move right on. So our blessings are, they all start the same way. Praise to you, Lord our God, rule the universe. Who? Something, 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 something. So it is a constant refrain of thanking God, of starting off with an attitude of gratitude. We have a blessing for the rooster, for the ability to distinguish between day and night. This would be the modern blessing for the alarm clock. Blessing for being Jewish, a blessing for being made in the divine image, for being free, for giving sight to the blind, clothing the naked, releasing the captive, straightening the bent, spreading the earth above the waters, providing me with all my needs, preparing the steps of people, girding Israel with might, Israel here being the Jewish people, crowning the Jewish people with glory, giving strength to the weary, and removing sleep from my eyelids and sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. All right. So last time we talked about which blessings resonate with you. today, before we dive into each of these blessings, we're going to think about them through someone else's eyes. So somebody with an addiction, which blessing or blessings would resonate with them?
Would you repeat the question?
Yes. Which blessing would resonate with somebody who has an addiction? Or blessings would resonate with someone who has an addiction?
David?
Yeah.
Some of it to me would also have to do with the person. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It's not addiction or visual impairment, but some people do, actually probably fewer people, but there are people who like very general rather than more specific. And what I mean by that is some of them are worded for the world or for Jews in general, not someone personally. Like the very end, the sleep from my eyes, that's very personal. So I would think part of the resonating would have to do with people's cognitive styles or personalities too.
That makes sense.
Having said that, addiction might be blind when, if blind is seen as, you know, the way Torah is more than just the 5 books, that blind is more than just visual impairment. Oh, maybe freedom too. Come to think of it. If that's somebody battling addiction, not in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Or straightens the bend. I'll stop now, but
Okay. Other thoughts?
You know, in a way, number 7, if a person, like some of the clients I deal with are so addicted, they feel like they are captive. So in a way, they are being released from their captivity.
Okay.
There was a gentleman raising his hand, but he's muted.
I lowered my hand because I was going to say freeze the captive.
I agree.
The person who spoke before me said what I was going to say. I think that's the prayer that speaks to addiction.
Okay. Somebody visually impaired. Which blessing or blessings might resonate with them?
Sight to the blind, captive straightens the bent. There's quite a few.
also meet needs.
Agree.
Right.
Okay. Somebody homeless or housing insecure.
Number 6.
Clothes the naked.
Number 10, who provides me with all my needs. If he had, you know.
Okay. A wounded veteran.
$14.
Strength to the weary.
Yeah.
Heals the sick.
Who straightens me?
Hmm.
Who straightens the bent? If he feels the loads that he's been carrying.
Yeah. All right. Somebody being sexually harassed. You can do ones not on this, not on screen. Also, I can't get them all on, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, David. I missed what you asked.
The
Somebody
question
who's
being sexually
what?
harassed.
sexually harassed?
Yeah.
How about number 14?
Thanks, Louiri.
Yes.
All right. Somebody whose house has flooded.
Whose health is what?
Whose house has flooded.
Oh, house is flooded. Oh, good. Mhm. Spreads the earth above the waters. God.
Well, that earth, if the house was flooded, was not above.
Yeah. Nonetheless, it might resonate with them in a different way.
Yes, that one way. But
Well, I think that's applicable to a lot of the questions that we've been asking. Like someone who is visually impaired, has not been given sight depending on, how impaired it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, like we're picking things that are applicable or relevant. So I think resonate is fair, but it doesn't, resonate isn't inherently positive or negative, I guess.
Yeah.
Doubt if number 4 would apply because I don't think they're happy to be free of their house.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had one in there that said, who created the rainbow?
Mm.
That came after the flood, the original flood, at least.
Yeah. All right. Somebody trying to improve the world.
I think number 9, because we don't want the waters to come up and flood everything like it seems to be doing.
Mm.
Number 12, so that we can withstand what is coming as a result of the world being destroyed, if you will.
Possibly number 11.
George Israel with me.
Number 14, almost all of them.
No.
who prepares the steps of people? Oh,
All right. So let's dig into these one by one. So this is the first one, who gives the rooster discernment to distinguish between day and night. Originally said when hearing the rooster, so that you are giving thanks that you're not oversleeping, that you can still hear when you wake up. It draws on a quote from the book of Job as interpreted by the Talmud, though you could also translate roost, the word being used for rooster, as mind. So the question is, when have you used discernment to distinguish between two options?
I'd say that's continuous throughout life.
Yeah.
Did you eat at home or go to a restaurant? Should you have dairy or steak? You're always making choices.
I mean, you're always I mean, if you have two options and you have to make a choice, you're discerning between two options. I mean, it's begging the question.
Okay. Let's go on to number 2. Second blessing, Shasani Yisrael, who made me a Jew. So this was the original language of this blessing, according to the Talmud, and only later did it get changed to, who didn't make me a non-Jew. So the question here would be, what do you like about being Jewish?
I guess I don't know what I would like about being anything else, so I don't know that I can answer that question. Never been anything else.
I guess that might be a question for me. Uh, um, okay, what do I like about being Jew? Well, one thing that I notice is like it kind of feels like I have a connection to like creation, more so like a responsibility, like I would say more so like a heightened responsibility and connection to like creation and also to people, I guess, to make the world better and to respect creation. So that's the one thing that I noticed the most.
And I've always felt very special about being Jewish. I mean, frivolously, we could just say you like the food, but I just think that ever since I've been a little kid, I just felt that I was given something really special by being born Jewish.
If you ask a young teenager, they might say they just like the bat mitzvah party.
Yeah, right. That's true. It's funny.
I've heard stories about non-Jewish kids who were invited to a bar mitzvah and went home and said, why couldn't they have a bar mitzvah party?
Don't you remember the New York Times about 10 years ago did a whole article on a Sunday about all these Christian kids that did exactly what you said, and their parents were making them these big parties because they wanted the gifts and they wanted the frivolity of the party.
I think the Wall Street Journal had an article even earlier than that, Norma.
Oh, really?
It focused on Texas.
Oh, this was New York. Okay, so that's funny. In Texas, they did it too. No one wants to get left out, I guess.
Yeah. I could say for many years that I was, as you folks already know, I spent quite a bit of time outside of the States in South and Central America and had no connection, no activities. There weren't too many communities. I didn't know how to connect because I was living in very remote areas. And eventually I felt that there was something missing. And I started seeking it out again, and particularly when we were married and where we had our children, it got to a point where I'm saying to myself, well, and Rosa as well, we have to start introducing some of what we are into our daily lives with the children, and we started improvising with the Seder and one thing or another, and lighting candles, and until eventually that's another story. We were able to connect with a few more people, and then we were all interested in the same thing, reinforcing our identity and providing an identity for our children, so they understand something about the universal powers, we say, about our religion. That Rosa said, well, the children can't live like animals. They need their grounding in their Judaism, and so that's something that there's always a seed within, and I don't know how I would feel if it were otherwise. And it gives us a special sense of fulfillment and tranquility up to a point, to say, particularly, I know Rosa, when she's Friday nights when we light the candles, that's a very special time for her. There's her time when she says her she has her personal meditations and thinks about, I know she thinks about the children and the grandchildren and whatever thoughts are. She doesn't share them with me, but she says that's when she's in communion with God and lifting her prayers. So that's very special for her and of course me, and it's made a difference in our family to have it.
There was a chat from Zoya. We have a very strong connection to God, and our stories are very relevant to our daily lives. What do other people like about being Jewish?
Can I say that one thing that I like about being Jewish, I think the very most is kind of what we're doing right now. It's like just the curiosity and the taking a sentence and spending so much time dissecting it and in every way. I think that's one of my more favorite things.
And we can argue with God.
All right, let's go on. So the next blessing is She'asani Bitsomo, who made me in the divine image. This is a quote from the story of people being created, where people are made in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim. And the Talmud says that to act in the ways of God is to make the world a better place. So how do you do that, and how do you aspire to do that?
Well, we can aspire if we want to make the world a better place. There are a lot of small things we can do, like recycling, taking care, looking after our neighbors.
That's great. What else?
May I just ask if I'm sorry I was late. May I just ask if you made a point about the previous one, She'asani Yisrael, that's actually in the Talmud. But as for this one, Shelo Asani Isha, that not made me a woman, is that in the Talmud?
Shelo Asani Isha was the original in the Talmud. Yes.
Okay. Just asking.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I think you have to study also so that you know what the ways of God are before I could go about trying to, make the world a better place in the ways of God. So I would think that study has something to do with it also.
David,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it the blessing where it says that God did not make us another nation? Is that where She'asani Israel comes from?
Actually, the other way around. So the original text in the Talmud has one positive, She'asani Israel, and two negative, that didn't make me a slave and didn't make me a woman. And the traditional Ashkenazi text tried to deal with that parallelism issue by making all of them negative. And then this one is based off of another version from the 500s that made all of them positive. But it is
I don't know.
The same. it is the same blessing.
But it says that you did not make me another nation, not Israel. That's why I'm very confused.
So the Talmudic text says Shesani Israel, that made me a Jew. It was changed by the rabbis to be a that didn't version, that didn't make me a non-Jew, presumably because the other two blessings in the Talmud were also a that didn't format, and they wanted to align it. And then this is based off of a different Siddur from 1500 years ago from the land of Israel that dealt with the parallelism by making all of them positive. It's a good question. All right. Other ways that people either make the world a better place or aspire to make the world a better place.
Simply smiling
Free.
and being kind. Or at least trying to be.
Helping others.
Giving money to charities.
All right, let's go on. So Shesani ben Chorin or Bat Chorin, who made me free. So those who identify as male would say who would say ben Chorin. Those who identify as female would say Bat Chorin. Those who identify as gender neutral would say B'nai Chorin. So these are different ways of saying who made me free. And again, they are originally based off of a version in the negative who made me not a slave. But this is focusing on what we are instead of what we aren't. So in what ways are you free? And in what ways are you not?
Considering all the laws that we have to abide by, considering that when we work, we all have bosses whose orders we have to more or less follow. There are times when you sort of wonder how free you really are. You have to work 40 hours a week from 9 to 5 in order to support a family. How free is that?
But you're free to do that. Or you're going to be a slave and work more than 40 hours and not be able to really do much but subsist.
That's true too.
So maybe I like the freedom of being able to find it to work. But we can get all sorts of political discussions. I'll leave it at that.
I have a comment about every day I add to my prayers. Thank you, God, for making it American.
Sounds like something my cousin from Ohio said, or paraphrased slightly different, but every day is a blessing, and thank God for the U.S. God bless the U.S. So.
I don't know if you can add this, but I was thinking about it. I'm glad he made me free to see the world like through Jewish eyes. Other than the reason I say that is since I came into Judaism, I feel more free than I've ever felt in my life. I know we have to, do mitzvahs and obey certain laws and commandments and things of that nature, but like just the world it just seems so much different and freer seeing it through Jewish eyes.
From my perspective, and it's kind of tying into some things that some people have said already, that the freedom I have felt throughout my life is that I get to choose who I am, and I get to choose the moral standards that I live by. And that includes at work. I've been in many situations, and not only at work, but in other situations. You get social pressures to conform to certain things. And I've always had this sense that I get to choose who I am. I don't have to conform if it goes counter to, the essence of who I am. And sometimes that's not necessarily easy per se, although I don't consider it a burden either. But I think that's a freedom. We do get to choose who we are, and we do get to choose how we live and whether we live to a certain moral code or whether we conform to other standards. And that has to do with maybe dishonesty or treating people not as well, and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's just my thought.
All right, let's go into the next question. So, Poker Ivrim, who gives sight to the blind. This was originally said upon opening your eyes, giving thanks that you can still see. It quotes from Psalm 146 as something that God does. That's the psalm that is in the morning service right after Ashrei. It also references the story of Hagar, which we are reading this coming Saturday. That God opened her eyes to see the well that had always been there, leading the rabbis to comment that all of us are blind to things that are in front of us sometimes. This and the rest of the blessings that are coming up can be interpreted literally and figuratively. So, in what ways has your sight been restored, literally and or figuratively?
Well, as a scientist, I can say that doing research and studying the world in various aspects really has opened my eyes to things that I never would have known if I hadn't gone into chemistry. And I have to assume that if God made the world, he made all these things that I have discovered. Not originally discovered, perhaps, but that I discovered for the first time when I was doing research and learning.
I think maybe when I have an opportunity to look at something with fresh eyes, look at it with from a different point of view, and not from my original biases.
Or when I hear somebody's interpretation of something, or hear what they have to say about the things that they see. A wider perspective.
I can give an example that I can think of is I used to, when walking to the gym, if there were two people with dogs that stopped to talk, I'd get all grumpy because they were in my way and I had to break stride. And one day I looked at it and said, "Oh, isn't that nice? There's people living in the neighborhood that are talking to each other in a city neighborhood." And so I feel like that's a different point of view and fresh eyes.
Nice.
There is a class this summer with David Class while our Rabbi Glick was on sabbatical. And I can't remember the author's name right now, but it gave me, in looking at it, it had to do with how you're looking at your life. And if you're kind of looking at it from like up above, like, what do you see in your life as a whole rather than just being involved in the day-to-day, made me think about things very differently.
All right, next blessing. Malbish Aramim, clothe the naked. So this was originally said after putting your clothes, when putting your clothes on after sitting up, giving thanks that you have clothing to wear. It refers to God giving clothing to Adam and Eve, and also to the Talmudic statement that this is one of the ways to be like God. So, what do you do with clothes that you are done with, and what could you do with them?
I give them to my maintenance man and he brings them to his church and he's very appreciative of it. He lives on the west side and he said, people really enjoy having nice things. He's a maintenance man in my building.
I give my clothes to the woman who used to be my housekeeper, who's now retired. And she spreads it through her family. And I've even had my children clothes it. Their children have grown out to Los Angeles and given them to her.
Would this apply to having a warm coat when it's cold out?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or even I have this wonderful hat that has a light on it that I really need when I'm walking the dog at night. That was wonderful from Amazon. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. This would be that blessing.
Also, Sarah's Inn, Park likes to get things too for the girls that are living there who need to go out on job interviews and they don't have the right clothes to wear. So.
All right, next question. Matira Surim, who releases the bound. This was originally said when sitting up straight after opening your eyes, giving thanks that you are able to sit up. It quotes from Psalm 147 as something that God does, and refers to Isaiah 58, which is the Haftorah for Yom Kippur, as something that God wants us to do. So, in what ways do you try to stretch your mind?
I'm having this conversation with you right now. For one.
That's good.
Even more so by having with all the people who are here.
I attended a lot of different studies over the years. And one thing that I think is an earmark here is that people actually listen to each other. A lot of times people try to say a lot, but not necessarily listen. And I think expanding your mind and opening your mind has a lot to do with listening to, not just internal, not just reading and studying, but it also has to do with listening to what other people think and their perspective.
Hmm.
So you put something in the chat about constantly learning.
I don't know if people will agree with me, but somehow with the Zoom, you are forced more to listen to other people because it's difficult to talk over somebody. If you're in a big room sitting around a table and one person talks and another person can interrupt, it's very difficult to do that on Zoom. So we have to listen to each other.
That's good, Naomi. I like that. That's great.
And this is, if we respect each other, everybody has a chance to express his opinion. With a good moderator, Mr. Schwartz.
Agreed.
Yay.
Thank you.
I feel like that's what.
Charles,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
say Charles, also her opinion, not just his opinion.
Mhm.
I feel like with our religion, and might be with a lot, other ones too, that we're constantly are learning. Like Evan, he goes to our synagogue and he learns there. There's like Daf Yomi, and then here we are, our Monday nights learning, and at being a teacher, I constantly am learning with professional development. Like we're always learning, and what's good about our religion, we have to ask questions.
Mhm.
So it's like, and here we are having this conversation. Everybody's asking questions. Everybody's their own ideas, and that's what what our religion is all about. We're just keeping our minds sharp and learning every single day.
And just a note of clarification, Daf Yomi is the practice of studying one page of Talmud front and back every day, even on Shabbat and Yom Kippur and every day. And so that over the course of 7.5 years, you complete the entire Talmud. And then the next day, people start over again if they're up for another round of 7.5 years. So it's a way of keeping everybody on the same page, literally, around the world. Been going on for about 100-ish years. It started in the 1920s.
Mhm.
All right, next question. Zokef Kefufim, who straightens the bent. This was originally said when standing up straight after putting on your clothes, giving thanks that you can still stand. It quotes from Psalm 146 as something that God does. In whom can you confide your worries that mentally weigh you down?
Mhm.
My adult children.
So, well, I think that goes both ways sometimes.
I agree.
Still, most of it's coming to us to help. Depends on which one of the children.
I have a friend, we have been friends since we're 14. We met in high school at Roosevelt High School in Chicago.
Wow.
And she and I do exactly that, you know. That's right, Barry. And we confide our worries to each other, and it's very helpful. I didn't see you, Barry. I didn't know you were here. Hi.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I've been having microphone problems all day, all night. I was trying to say hello. And you hit the nail on the head, Norma, about you relating to Roosevelt and me with von Steuben. It's we every now and then somebody we knew sobers us up.
Yeah, we were almost then neighbors.
We knew each other when we weren't nothing.
Well, you were a couple of years behind me.
I'm class of '66.
No, I was 64.
Oh wow. Where at, huh? Where were you at?
Von Steuben.
Von Steuben, really? Okay.
I went to
Wow.
Von Steuben. I
This
graduated in
conversation,
'65.
There was the
Oh,
Steve
look at
Handler class,
that.
wasn't it?
You got a whole bunch of you.
Was
Yeah.
Steve Handler in your class?
Yeah, you mentioned him to me. I still remember that name.
Yeah.
All right, you'll
David,
continue. You'll
I
continue
don't want to
the
get off on
conversation
that
in the.
track.
You will
David,
continue the
One
conversation in the
story.
chat. Let's go on to verse
Playing high
number
school.
11.
Agreed. David Weininger, good to see you. Go ahead, David.
Amen.
All right. Rokaha Aretz al-Hamayim, who spreads the earth over the waters. This was originally said upon taking your first 2 morning steps after standing up straight, giving thanks that your house didn't flood overnight. Remember, it could always be worse.
Yeah.
It quotes from Psalm 136 as something that God does. How do you protect the earth, and how do you protect the waters?
By doing both.
You don't
And
live.
how do you do that? It's not
Conservation.
basically
Yeah, you don't
Conservation,
live-
respect, conservation.
Recycling, conservation.
Stop polluting.
That too. Recycle.
Find non-polluting sources of energy.
Yeah. Keep the manufacturers away from the water, the rivers and the lakes and the water sources, and not dumping chemicals into our lakes and rivers.
Yeah. Get your energy from the sun.
Or
Good.
wind,
Good.
or wind.
Or wind.
Good.
Wind, geothermal, hydro, water power, gravity.
I don't know if this is true or not. I think
That's
it
right.
is. But a few years ago, I stopped using plastic bags for my sandwiches. I started going back to waxed paper instead because I think it's biodegradable. I hope it is anyway. That's what I believe. So if I'm wrong, somebody tell me. But that was one small way that I tried to protect the earth.
Google
Stop
it.
using as much plastic. And of course, using containers instead of disposable bags as well.
Okay. You could Google that, Diane.
I worked with somebody who was starting a project on studying studying degradation, especially in our garbage dumps. And he told me the story of somebody digging down into the garbage in a garbage dump and finding a hot dog wrapped in a newspaper. The newspaper was very legible. The hot dog looked fresh. And it was about 50 years earlier that it was the date of the newspaper. So I'm not sure how much stuff was degrading in those garbage dumps because air was not getting down into those dumps, so bacteria couldn't work on them.
Or maybe it's just someone had an old newspaper and wrapped a dog in it.
Yeah.
Kind of a natural vacuum, huh? Air wasn't getting in.
Oh, it was anaerobic is all I can tell you.
Well, there must be something to that, Herb, and because now I can remember doing an excavation once in one of my jobs, and it was down about 15 or 20 meters. And they were finding really tree trunks in very good condition. And at that depth, those tree trunks are there for centuries. It wasn't something that just happened because so there was a what we call an alluvial plain where still you'd have flooding occasionally through some of the stream beds. I'm getting off the track here, but it's not unheard of.
All right, so looking at the time, I'm going to show you the rest of the questions in the source sheet, and then you can study it on your own. So number 12, who provides for all my needs? This was about putting on shoes originally, giving thanks that you can afford shoes and your other needs, and that you can go out to earn a livelihood. So the question to ponder is which needs are being met for you. Mechin Mitzade Gavir, who guides the steps of people, originally said upon taking your next 2 steps, giving thanks that you can walk. Quotes from Psalm 37. So the question here is, when have you felt divine guidance and how your life turned out? Next question, Ozer Yisrael Bigvura, girds the Jewish people with strength. Originally, before putting on your belt for going out, which was the place where people tucked in weapons of self-defense. So giving things that you can still defend yourself, and then what strengths do you have? Oter Yisrael B'tifara, crowns the Jewish people with glory. Originally said upon putting on your hat, giving thanks that you can still stay warm or otherwise protect yourself from the sun. So the question is how you decide what to wear in your head. Hanutain Le'ayif Koach, this is my favorite of these blessings. Give strength to the tired. I'm always tired when I say this blessing in the mornings. This blessing does not actually appear in the Talmud, either Talmud, and it's a quote from Isaiah 40. So how do you ensure you get enough sleep? And then Hama'avir Sheina Me'enai Numa Me'afapai, who wipes sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. This comes from a little bit further down on the page in the Talmud, so it is often separated in the Siddur and attached to the next paragraph.
This is another tefillah for me.
Originally said when washing your face, and so if you stayed up all night, like at a Tikkun El Shavuot, then you would not say this blessing if you didn't sleep all night because there was no sleep to wipe from your eyelids. And so a question that might feel familiar: what do you do when you're tired in the morning? I have here the Reform version of this blessing, of this prayer, and how the blessings have been rearranged, which is totally kosher according to the Shulchan Aruch, that you can move the blessings around. And there's a video so you can see it for yourself. The Orthodox version of the first couple blessings. What to do if you have a disability. I did some research into this last week. And so one way of looking at it that Rabbi Lorne Tuckman has dealt with, instead of saying who gives sight to the blind is who has made me whole. And I have a link to thinking about that. The rooster one, if you're hearing impaired, you can use the original meaning of the word sechvi instead of rooster as heart or mind, and that does not require any hearing. So things to think about there. The blessing, who made me a Jew, if you're a convert. If you're a Jew by choice, some people say you can't say this blessing. On the other hand, we know from the Talmud that future converts had a Jewish soul that was present when the Torah was given at Mount Sinai. So one who converts to Judaism is coming back to the person that God meant them to be. So yes, who made me a Jew. Also, the word Yisrael means one who wrestles with God. And so it is certainly true that people who convert to Judaism can say, blessed are you who made me a wrestler with God. So things to think about there. Some musical versions: Weekday, Shabbos, Festival, Congregational Melody by Noah Aronson, Kaira Geniza Fragment, and Halachic Evolutions. So that was a lot in a few minutes. Um,
Great. This turned out to be so enjoyable.